He's Justin Kinney, I'm Glenn Marini, and it's week 3 of Inside the Zone. We've had a chance to practice our insight and talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. This is going to be a stellar show. In week 1, coming right out of the gate, you can easily be tricked about what you're seeing. You never know if it's actually going to play itself out throughout the rest of the season. Now we've had a chance to see teams twice. So what are some of the things that have maybe over the last couple of weeks been solidified for you, or maybe you changed your opinion on after playing a second game for a certain team?
Well, I think going into the season, we felt the SAC was going to be a scorer's conference, and it definitely has turned into that. If you want to win this conference, if you want to compete to win this conference this year, you're going to have to put up a lot of points, and like a lot of them. I mean, you're going to have to score into the 40s to really win 7, 8, 9 games to be in contention for this championship. So for me, that's kind of been solidified and proven, is that the offensive juggernauts of this conference are going to be tough to slow down. So you're going to have to score points to beat them.
As Kyle Lindsey is finding out, you have to be healthy as well. And we remarked on it, I think, on Friday night. But when you take a look at all the guys that were out for Luers and then losing Austin Mack to a concussion late in the first quarter, they were actually in that game until mid-third quarter against Snyder. You're going to look at the final score and say, oh, okay, Snyder blew him out. Not the case. They played pretty well considering everybody that wasn't on the sideline. Yeah,
Coach Lindsey said Friday night, other than our offensive line, everybody was playing both ways. And we saw Jack Johnson make a big play, blew up a screen. He's their quarterback that night. He's having to play on the edge at nickelback. So everybody, you're missing Wazinski, you're missing Mack, you're missing Griggs, you're missing Jet. You got Jalen Charlton playing one way because he got a bum ankle, so he can't run the ball. And there you are tied at 27. They're midway through the third quarter. So I think one thing we kind of overlooked, that late in that second quarter, and what I think Luers was up, 27-21, something like that. They forced Snyder to punt. They get the ball with a couple minutes left in the half. They throw the interception that sets up the tying touchdown for Snyder. They gave them all the momentum going into the halftime. So is there a different outcome if that doesn't happen? Maybe not, because I think eventually Snyder would have worn down in the second half. But, I mean, Luers was in prime position to at least have all the momentum going into halftime. And for how shorthanded they were, that was very impressive.
You mentioned scoring in the SAC, and Homestead historically has been known for that. This year is no exception. Drew Kazai. We always talk about Homestead having to replace guys, whether it's Zach Terrell or Logan Laughlin, or in this case, Logan Ormsby graduating. All-conference type quarterbacks. They just find quarterbacks, apparently, in the hallways at Homestead High School. Drew Kazai apparently is the next one. Yeah,
it's almost crazy with this conference in that Drew Kazai is probably the 4th or 5th best quarterback in this conference, but he's so good. We talked about it before the season started. Well, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0 quarterbacks, but I don't think that's the case. I think if Drew Kazai, whoever he was battling with for that quarterback job, must be the equivalent of him if they battled so far into the scrimmage week before they named a starter. It's pretty crazy because they have a great quarterback, great wide receivers. Landon Darnell is running the ball very well. That offensive line has come together here in the early part of the season. So we'll see. So the interesting thing for me in the SAC, we talked about Carroll and Homestead coming in, and so many people said, well, now we're going to see what Carroll and Homestead are all about. Now, Carroll and Homestead, they haven't played Snyder yet. They haven't played Luers yet. They haven't played each other yet. But after 2 weeks, they're 4-0, averaging 52 points a game. So it seems like they belong a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And that other quarterback, Garrett Drysdale, was the other junior that was battling Drew Kazai for it. And obviously, he's pretty good. I remember talking to their coaches after the scrimmage. They're like, we're not 100% sure exactly where we're going. Drew Kazai, if he wasn't the clear-cut guy, Garrett Drysdale must be pretty darn good.
Last year, Tommy Roskowski comes in and was pretty solid for Logan Ormsby last year when Logan got hurt. So it seems like a similar situation this year. I'm sure if Garrett had to come in, he'd probably do just as good a job.
So Homestead has Dwenger at their place. What do you need to see from Dwenger? Because they put up 38 points last week. And this is kind of a misleading stat, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. They were outgained by Concordia, 367 yards to 208 yards. Now, Dwenger had a kick return for a touchdown. That obviously takes away an entire drive for your offense. But what do you see as being the biggest key for Dwenger against this Homestead team on Friday night?
I think, Blake Pachoni only had 1 completion, I think 8 or 10 yards on Friday. They didn't need that, so it wasn't like, they were pushing it and forcing it. But he has to have a better game. That passing game has to be a better attack than last Friday because they're going to have to score points against Homestead. That's going to be a game that I think the team is going to win, is going to near 40 points. because I just don't know. As solid as that Dwenger defense was, I thought they were very solid week 1 against Lures. I just don't know if you can hold Homestead to under 20 points. I think you're just going to have to score and score and score. And I don't know if Dwenger can do that. They proved it last week they could do it. A lot of us had doubts that they could do it against Concordia. They proved us wrong. But to do it again now at Homestead, maybe a different story.
Because Homestead has so many options, we already talked about the quarterback position, but you've got Ben Skronik, a Big Ten recruit out there playing a receiver, Kreider, Watson, Durnell's running the football well. Who do you take away? How do you try to limit that offense?
I think it's tough because in the mindset of teenagers, they're lining up across Ben Skronik, and he's not a physically imposing dude. He's tall, but he's pretty lanky. Austin Kreider's not physically imposing. Landon Durnell's not. So I think these kids are lining up across the field from these kids, going, they may have dominated the NHC, but this is the SAC, and they're being surprised, and they're being beat off the ball and beat deep, and just fundamentally broken down by these kids that can play football. And I think they're teaching these teams they've played so far, and this goes for Carroll too, that we can play some ball, and we're showing it. And for the first 2 weeks, the teams have.